Previously on Live to Fight, Another Day, Episode 1. When Malika Masters receives a frantic call from her daughter, her world shatters. The police have a warrant for her arrest. Confused, terrified, and desperate for answers, Malika faces a nightmare she never saw coming. As fear grips her, she must decide whether to run or surrender, clinging only to her faith and whispering, "God, I do not understand this, but I still trust you." Upon entering the processing area, Malika was taken aback to another time and place, Coronation Market, downtown Kingston, where she often went on Saturdays to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. Their humanity came together in a medley of sorts, hoping for an even exchange in their dealings. The resemblance here was uncanny. However, while the market thrived with community, one group in this place saw the others as commodities they could easily exploit and, if possible, later discard, and disparity filled the place. They viewed them not as humans who had stumbled or lost their way in the haze of life, but those with lives deemed destined to fail, failure imposed through bigotry and all that it brings. Now, over time, bereft of sensitivity to others, the system attacked autonomy and personhood like a rite of passage, one handed down by those like them, conditioned by a past they refused to acknowledge. For those on the receiving end, like Malika, there seems to be no escape. Malika realized she, too, was now an acquisition, guilty by a broken system, cloaked in ignorance. She watched in terror. The scene was one of chaos, as the officers ran around as if at a cattle auction, and a fresh shipment had just arrived. She was one of them, even though she should not have been. As one who studied Black history extensively, the ugliness of human nature still surprised her. The officers placed people of color in shackles, chains, and handcuffs in a marketplace setting, treating them like goods. There were individuals like Malika, fresh off the streets, next in line to become emotionally debased, all targets not because of ethics, poor choices, or stupidity. Many were guilty of these, but for something more profound. Distaste and distrust permeated the air until the stench of human inhumanity to its kind filled the atmosphere. The energy in the atmosphere also reeked of the ethos that makes us need a savior in Christ, a broken spirit with sin as its compass. Like a pungent smell, it blanketed the air, and what should have been a rallying cry to rise to man's better angel instead became a shameful display of how low sin can plunge the soul. From the far end, a tall, blonde-haired man called out upon seeing her, "Who is that one?" She and the security guard answered in unison, "Malika Masters." The blonde-haired man motioned for her to join him. As she walked toward him, her heart raced. With each awkward step, her lungs felt as if they would burst. Consciously monitoring her breathing, she held her head high and approached the officer as instructed. He gestured to a chair beside a metal table stacked with files. Sitting across from her, he glared at her with contempt. The interrogation began. "Where have you been?" "We have been looking all over for you," he demanded. His glazed stare was deep and confrontational, although they had never met. She had a clean record, so his aggression came as a surprise to her. Methodical and hostile, that was his M.O., she guessed. Ignoring the question, she responded to his deeper demand. "I am here now. Why am I here? Paul Bender, do you know him?" he snapped, his gaze still intimidating. Malika's heart sank. The confirmation validated her suspicions. "Yes, I do." "Why?" He breathed a heavy sigh. She could not tell if he was reveling in victory or masking something else. "We have had him under surveillance for quite some time, monitoring him from the air and through wiretaps." Through our investigations, we discovered he engages in illegal activities. Your name came up in his files as a co-signer for undocumented immigrants. For that, you are charged with conspiracy." On hearing that, it felt like a gut punch. Malika gasped. Speculation materialized into dread. He continued, "We are charging you a fine of $250,000 and a maximum of 5 years imprisonment." Another officer, a female, interrupted. "Who is this one?" "Malika Masters," he replied. The female officer chimed in with the same sterile tone. "Where have you been? You had us searching everywhere for you. It is good you had the sense to turn yourself in today." In their eyes, Malika was an unredeemable misfit. Although the judicial system claims that one is innocent until proven guilty, that was only on paper. Unable to respond as she wished, she remained quiet and redirected her attention to the interrogator. Under normal circumstances, she might have said, "If you had informed me you were coming, I would have waited at home for you." He continued, "Tell us, how did you meet Paul Bender? How long have you known him, and what is the nature of your relationship with him?" They stared, measuring her responses and body language. Unable to escape the spotlight, she sat frozen. Nervously, she tried to answer, at first stuttering gibberish as if suffering a brain freeze. "What language is that?" the officer snapped. "You're not making sense." Taking a deep breath, she tried again, speaking slowly and clearly. "I do not have the answers you are seeking to all these questions you are throwing at me. I am not sure what you want from me. I did nothing wrong. Let me repeat myself," he said, and does so verbatim. "He and I met through a coworker who became my friend, and we all became friends. We have not spoken in almost 2 years. I do not have any information about his lifestyle or daily activities. Right now, I do not remember signing any papers." She paused, trying to jolt her memory. Then, like a shadow from the past, she remembered. "If I did, it might have been about 2 of them, I believe." "How much money did you get paid for signing those papers?" he demanded. "I did not receive payment for signing the papers. I got around $80 for groceries when I was sick and unemployed," the female officer interjected crossly. "You want us to believe the money you received was gifts, not payments?" She glared at Malika as if she were a stray, a mongrel. Malika lifted her face and turned to her defiantly. "Yes, I understood it to be a gift. He had done things like that before, and I had signed nothing for him on those occasions. He knew my situation and wanted to help. The explanation was unacceptable." Impatience rose. "Malika, we want the truth from you. What you want us to believe is unacceptable. We know he paid you. If you do not tell us what we want, it will get much worse for you. Do you want to spend years in prison?" Her knees knocked together. She felt as if she were about to lose control of her bladder. With hands clasped between her knees, she sat, frozen. The female officer leaned in, threatening. She realized it would get worse before it got better, so she complied, willing to tell them whatever they wanted to hear to make them go easier on her. She chose the lesser of 2 evils. Then they fingerprinted and photographed her. Malika felt defiant, so she asked the officer if she should strike a pose during her mug shots. "Do as you wish," he said with contempt. She cringed when she saw the mug shot. She looked like she had just been shot out of a cannon. Guards later ushered her into a large holding cell, handcuffed, chained, and shackled, now physically and mentally spent. Women of all ages lay on the floor or sat on concrete slabs framed like benches. All were women of color, except for a 35-year-old blonde who moved around the cell with the ease of a returning offender. She quickly took control of the room, appointing herself the jailhouse examiner with years of experience. Slowly and intentionally, she went around to each woman, analyzing their crimes and offering her expert advice as a regular offender. Malika sat on a nearby slab, observing and listening, unwilling to believe she was part of such a twisted plot. Next in line was an 18-year-old sprawled on the cold cement floor, with her cheeks stained by her tears. There she was, looking up at this woman as if she had the key to her freedom. The girl explained, "I came here on a scholarship from Africa. Uncle Paul offered me $1,500 to help with my schooling. I signed the papers, not knowing that I was breaking the law. Now I have lost everything I worked so hard for, and worse, they will send me home in disgrace. My entire family relied on me to help them escape poverty. Now look at what I have done. I am 18 years old, the youngest child in the family. My family pooled the little they had to get me here. Look what Uncle Paul talked me into." Another woman blurted out, unable to wait for her turn. "Paul came to me and offered $800, which I needed to purchase life-saving medication. My insurance does not cover those meds. If I had known this would happen, I would have made sure I got more than 800. All this aggravation for what? A measly 800? One after another, the women chimed in with the stories that had brought them together in the same room, waiting to share a similar fate. Aurelia, the woman who introduced Malika to Paul, lay on the floor, weeping bitterly. Malika viewed her as one of the most complicated people she had ever known. She was angry. It was as if a dark cloud hovered over her. Yet Malika accepted and loved her, understanding the brutality Aurelia had endured. Through female castration, psychological abuse, and the conditioning to see herself as of no value, only to be in the service of others. Another woman, claiming to be a relative of Paul, could not understand how he would put her in such a position. She thought that being a relative of his would have exempted her from his deception. The blonde examiner moved from woman to woman. Finally, it was Malika's turn, and she was seeking details of her role in the crime, but Malika politely declined. "Ladies, I am too upset to talk right now. I do not want to place myself in a medical emergency. I appreciate your concern, and God will guide us through this. Let us not lose faith." The blonde shifted to another lesson on preparing for jail. "Ladies, whenever you are going to jail, make sure you wear socks. Socks protect the skin around the ankle from the shackles rubbing as you move." The women formed a circle as if in a classroom. Malika sat apart, telling herself it was all an awful dream from which she would soon wake. "Malika Masters, follow me," an officer called. Without a word, Malika followed him to a small, windowless room. She had claustrophobia, and the concrete box of a room would test her inner strength. Keeping it together was not optional. It was a matter of survival. The officer instructed her to sit on a concrete seat, where she remained for hours. Malika steeled herself by looking beyond the walls that imprisoned her body, but could not imprison her mind. Through her mind's eye, she traveled to another place and time along the New Jersey shoreline in Ocean Grove, a place where she found solace and inspiration. There, her creativity flowed, merging with the hypnotic allure of its picturesque beauty. Hours later, an officer returned and escorted her to a scheduled hearing. Emma, her daughter, and Jacob, Emma's husband of 48 hours, placed their home as bond for Malika's release. The complexity of Malika's life unfolded in ways she could not have imagined. She jokingly referred to herself as government property. Daily contact with the judicial system revealed the magnitude of her alleged crime, that of signing affidavits of support for undocumented immigrants. Authorities treated her like a dangerous criminal. Meanwhile, Paul's people watched Emma and Jacob's home, where Malika stayed, in their attempt to intimidate her into silence. However, she knew next to nothing about Paul's illicit activities. It felt like high crimes and drama. Most days, she moved in a mental fog, fearful of additional charges, mindful to guard every word and action amid a tsunami of problems. As her trial date drew closer, the court permitted her to spend 2 hours out on weekdays and 8 hours on weekends. On weekends, Malika rented a stall at the flea market for both monetary and psychological survival. Laughter accompanied her steps. People patronized her not because she had what they wanted, she sold her belongings, but because they wanted to contribute to her well-being, sensing a mismatch between her spirit and her circumstances. Max, a neighboring vendor, liked her and became like a brother, helping her as needed. One day, she shared the burden in her heart. To God, I give the glory for being able to stand here today. It is only God. Max, I will say this. I will come through this. Now that I am at the bottom of life's ladder, there is nowhere to go but up, to the pyramids of my aspirations, in due season. Shocked by her revelations, he stood bewildered, eyes bulging. She smiled, added, "And God isn't through with me yet." Max smiled back at her in agreement. Nothing more needed to be said. When she could not afford to pay for her stall for one weekend, Max paid for the space. Tears filled her eyes with appreciation. As the week of her trial approached, she confided in him. On the eve of the hearing, Malika felt the ground tilt. Would the court see a criminal to be caged, or a woman caught in a snare not of her making? The gavel had not fallen yet, but the weight of it pressed on her. The hand of God would cast the final decision. As she faced the unknown, she looked to God, from whom her help comes.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't for more stories like these. Do not forget to hit the like button and also share. Kindly leave a comment to share your ideas. Thank you.